I have good news for you. At least this time I'm gonna spare you from my long-winded intros and jump straight into the review of the RevoNext QT3. Cost about 60 bucks, so let's just see how good they are, and let's also see what's in the box, which is not a whole lot, because if we take it out, you can see we get a manual, we get 3 different sizes of ear tips, along with the in-ear obviously, and a box with a whole lot of nothing. No, joke aside, that's where the cable was in, but there is no pouch and nothing extra, not a clip or anything like that. It would have been definitely handy if it would have at least come with a pouch, but let's get into what's obviously important. Now, the silicone tips that are available in 3 different sizes do a well job, absolutely fine, no problems here at all. They stick quite well in my ear. Obviously, many people will use foam or something like that, but let's already get into the one thing that I don't like. As you can see, this mess of a cable. I mean, I don't get why so many brands get these kind of sticky cables that give you so much of a hard time, because they tangle up all the time. I mean, on the end it's good and it overall feels quite high quality, but getting it straight will need quite some training, some retraining on them, because they usually always tangle up and you won't get them ever out of your pocket and they will stay like they are. But a good thing about this cable, it's replaceable, and what you can actually do, since this is a normal 2-pin, there are actually Bluetooth neck bands that you can use and turn them into Bluetooth headphones. I've actually ordered something like that, but it's still on their way. Then we also get this kind of sleeving above where we get the hook system, which works a little bit different than on some other ones. But the metal housing, as you can see with the 3 screws, looks high quality, feels good. It's actually not that big, especially not in your ear as it looks. And then the separation from 2 to 1 cable is actually quite long, which is a good thing. So let's put them in, because both sides are marked. Let's just put them around our ear, or my ear in this case. Put them in. Okay, that's that. Works okay, but not great. The cable is the one thing that I don't like so much, because as you can see, usually there is on some ones, like for example the RevoNext a little bit of a weight that kind of drags them down, which doesn't make the cable feel like so much. It's always kind of going against your ear, and I don't think if you can see that, but it always tangles here around inside of your ear, and it feels a little bit like the overall fit is not that good, because it is a secure fit, especially this, because if you have them in, the hook holds them in place, the ear tips go far enough, and compared, for example, to the RHA that I usually have, where they kind of bump into a wall on my left weird ear, this is not really a thing here. So they're actually, for their size, quite comfortable, because also the Brainwave B400, actually smaller overall chassis, felt noticeably more uncomfortable for me in my ear. So even those are not super small, they are actually very comfortable in the ear, so I can have them in for hours and hours. But like I said, the cable is the one thing that bothers me a little bit, and especially if you want to maybe use different ear tips, it's fine. But then again, we have this cable that tangles up, so mostly get the cable replaced and you should be absolutely fine. But since this is a wired headphone, we also have to talk about how easy it is to power. And I would say it's actually pretty easy, because with a phone like, for example, the OnePlus 5T, it works out just fine. I have some resource left, so it goes loud enough. But I've also noticed that it doesn't take full advantage of the actual sound possibilities like you would get maybe, for example, with a small little DAC or a proper headphone amp. Obviously, you don't need them, but you will get a better experience, because, for example, if I use the Ultrasound Nows, you immediately notice a change in terms of sound signature, because the bass not just gets a little bit more tight, more punchy, and a little bit heavier, but it also is a little bit more there, but with more details. And it's not like it's more or overbearing. It does a really actual nice job, and I prefer it definitely with the Nows over the OnePlus, which has a decent headphone jack, I would say. But also the sound stick gets a little bit wider, and what I've noticed that the roughness, kind of the glare of what these have in the highs, also gets away. Now, when it comes to the sound stage, that one I have to say is, for an in-ear like this one, for a closed one, actually moderate. It's quite wide, and due to so many highs, it feels a little bit more open. Imaging is fine, but now let's get to the sound signature, which is heavy. And I don't mean heavy in the bass segment, but in the actual opposite. Because what someone described them really well, treble cannons. That's what they are. But the actual sad thing is that they have a really good bass, because the bass extends quite okay. I mean, the sub bass isn't all that extreme, and the bass is well defined, it's structured, it's quite punchy, quite dry, a little bit on the warmer side, but it's never overbearing, and it does a good job. You could listen to these with bass heavy music and so on, but that's not really what they're meant for. So they are pushing a different kind of music a little bit more than that. But if you EQ them, then it works out better. But I'm gonna get into the EQing a little bit more. Now mids, I guess, are good if you can actually hear them with the default signature, because the highs just overshine everything. And like I said, there is a little bit of a glare, but that's actually minimal. But the thing is just that they push the highs so extreme, which is usually a good thing, because I'm someone who, except of many people, likes a lot of highs. I like the clarity, the openness, the details and so on. And you get that with this one. I mean, that's the good thing. You have the ground bass for a lot of details, a lot of clarity and so on. But they also come with quite some sibilance, and they get harsh over time. So listening to these for a longer period of time, stock is a little bit of a harder task, because it's just so overbearing. You can't really focus on the mids at all, because even though the bass does a good job, everything in the highs is just so much forward pushing, which brings me to my thing. What sounds actually quite good on those is kind of things where it's not too of a high of a dynamic range, because if they push all the dynamics to the highs, it gets heavy to listen to them. I mean, it's really fatiguing. And for example, what works really great is vocals, orchestras and so on, where there's not too much bass and just not too much variety, where the highs just don't come through that much. And that's where the EQing comes in. Usually I try to avoid it, because I want to review the headphone as it is. But if it's like this with a signature that is just so uncomfortable to listen to for a longer time, I had to try it. And what I would actually recommend you to do mostly is just lower the highs. So the lower mids maybe, and definitely the highs have to go lower to kind of get this extreme thing out of the way, the glare, the harshness, especially the sibilance, to get rid of that. Because if you listen loud on these, sibilance, even though it's not actually extreme, but due to so pushed highs, it can be heavy. Now, are they good to EQ? I guess I would have to say yes, because they respond very well to if you push the bass, in case you even need it, because the bass, like I said, is doing a nice balanced job. It's not too much, too little or so, but the bass on its own is really good. And once you actually bring up the mids a little bit more into the foreground, so those can actually do what they do really good as well, and the highs are a bit less down, I have to say, then they are absolutely nice to listen to, because the overall qualities of the drivers and everything else is there. But the thing is just, if you want to get through all that hassle, because to actually go already to the conclusion, I mean, the comfort is good, and especially if you replace the cable, it should be even better. But for 60 bucks, I don't know if you want extra money to be spent and not just get something that is a little bit more expensive and better in its first place, because this cable, I mean, it's usable. And for some people, this maybe isn't so much of an issue as for me, because I'm very sensitive to anything around or in my ears. But the comfort on its own is really nice, not too big, very good build quality, and sound qualities on their own. The foundation is there, but out of the box, I think, I don't know, I've never heard any headphone that is so much of a treble cannon like these ones. Now, the good thing is I rather prefer to tone things down that are too harsh than not having them and trying to push them, because if you have something with very muddy or muffled highs and you push those, you won't really get more details out of it, you just get more highs. But these have the details, these have the clarity if you want to get it, and if you just lower the harshness out of that, you don't really lose out on the details. So it does a good job on that. But for 60 bucks, I have to say it's not quite my thing. And then, for example, I just reviewed those recently. The RHA MA650 are available as a wired version for about the same price. So even a little bit less, like for example, 50 bucks. And they are not nearly as good as the MA750, which cost a little bit more than both of these, with a wired version of about 70, 80 bucks. But very nice balanced job, and out of the box already sound really pleasing. So these, they need some work, but I'll definitely give them a second try once I get the Bluetooth neckband, because I mean, comfort is really good in my ear, because especially with quad drivers it's an issue for me. So then they actually might change my mind. But until then, I wish you a nice day. Until next time, bye.